Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. Daniel here. I hope you're doing well, and if you're not, I hope you are soon. Okay, today in the Dungeon Dive, we are going to be taking a quick look at Spire's End, Hildegard. This is the standalone follow-up to the original Spire's End, which I have taken a look at on the channel before. This game was provided to the Dungeon Dive as a review copy. So thank you, Favreau Games. This game was designed by Gregory Favreau with illustrations by Diego Frias and Audrey Roven. I did purchase the small expansion that is kind of like a booster pack that adds a few cards to your set, but I have not mixed those in. Overall, I think Spire's End Hildegard is a pretty good game. I've had a few frustrations with learning the game, and we'll talk a little bit about those later. But if you are looking for another game to add to your collection of game book style games presented as card games, then you will probably want to look into Spire's End. I know it will be delivering or is delivering now from Kickstarter, and I am hoping that this one does go to retail so that other people have the opportunity to play this game. Because with just a few caveats, I think I can recommend this. I've been having a lot of fun. So in the game, you are going to get 4 decks of cards that are separated into chapters. So this is one of those games where a lot of the fun is in the discovery, is in flipping over the cards and seeing what comes next. So I'm not going to be showing a ton of stuff for the game because I don't want to accidentally spoil anything major. I will show on screen some pictures of some of the cards, and I will do a quick flip through of the deck 1 cards here for chapter 1, just so you can get a sense of some of the variety. But you will get a large deck of cards for chapter 1, for chapters 2, 3, and 4. So there are 4 chapters in this game. One of the things that I was most attracted to about this game is the art and graphic design. I also really did like the art and graphic design for Spire's End, the original, but as you can see, it is a very different. The original Spire's End used these very large cards. Everything was black and red and gray. It was very brutal. It had a very stark look to it. Whereas Spire's End Hildegard has a much softer look to it, but make no mistake, the softer look you may think that the game has a softer edge to it, that it's not as maybe kind of brutal or as violent or as dark as the original, because the original went to some pretty dark places and it was pretty violent. And this game keeps in that tradition. I was a little surprised because just by the softer tones and the colors used, I thought this would be a little softer on that side, but it is not. And that's one issue I'm going to talk about a little later. But I absolutely love the color of this game. I love the dice. The dice are big and chunky, and they have really great soft colors. The normal dice that you will be using in your combat checks are really nice. We'll talk a little bit about the combat checks. That's something I enjoy. The plastic cubes are nice, if a little bit confusing. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. But overall, I think this is a very well-designed package in terms of visual presentation. Now, I'm just going to very quickly fan through the cards from chapter 1, just so you can get a little look of them, or look at them, I should say. I think there was a pretty strong Kingdom Death Monster influence on the graphic design of the cards. Some of these cards look straight out of Kingdom Death Monster, especially something like that. And that's not a bad thing. This is a very kind of classy looking game, and I think it looks really good on the table. I also like that it takes up a small space. It doesn't take up a ton of space. I know you can get one of those neoprene mats, but the neoprene mat is much bigger than it needs to be. If you just want to play a small game, you don't need that mat, and you can just play in a little space like this. So on my adventure through chapter 1, these are the cards that I didn't get to. So a small stack of cards that I didn't get to. And I probably only saw about maybe a half of the cards in this particular deck. So there is definitely some replayability. There are definitely choices that you will make that will lock you out of accessing certain cards in each chapter. So you can go through and make different choices and have different outcomes. I saw 2 different endings in chapter 1, but the last ending I saw said that that was ending 3. So somewhere there was another choice that I could have made that would have given me another ending. The endings do end your game, but what I do is just like playing a game book. I just kind of like went back to the decision point and continued playing with the other decision or with making better dice rolls or something like that, just so I wouldn't have to start over. I don't like starting over in these kinds of games. I want one game to be kind of like that game's choices throughout with a fail forward. And then the next time I play, I'll make different choices. I didn't want to reset up the deck and play the game again from the beginning. So that's kind of up to you how you want to do it. But you can kind of cheat just like you would in an old game book, you know, keeping your finger in the page. So if you die, you can go back. But just know that there are moments where the game will just end. And sometimes those endings do come just because you didn't roll the dice. You didn't get lucky with your die rolls. And I know that that can be a little bit of a frustration to some people. I think the story is well paced, and that's one thing that I do like about this game. There's a lot of energy to the narrative, and it is pushing your character Hildegard through the opening scenario. It feels like there's an urgency to her quest, and I did really enjoy that. There were parts where I wanted to play faster because the narrative drive was at a certain pace that it just wanted me. I wanted to keep going to see what was going to happen next. In this kind of game, that's kind of like the best recommendation I can give. I do really like the dice system when you are trying to figure out combat. So I'm going to show you a couple cards now. These are, I'm not showing you in any order, so they're going to be out of context. So I really don't think this is a spoiler, but I'm going to show you how the combat works just because I think it is very interesting. It uses a system that is kind of like Elder Sign or Yahtzee. And so during the game, there's a part where you want to shoot because you are armed with a slingshot. I should show you some of the items I have received in my quest. I found a will, I found a fishing rod, a slingshot, an enchanted bota bag, a silver cap mushroom, and a mysterious package. Hildegard is a marksman. She is a great shot with her slingshot. In order to kind of simulate that, you are going to be rolling dice and you're going to be combining different symbols to make bullseyes. And a bullseye will be a complete circle with a bullseye dot in the center. So if you were to roll these 2 dice and you got this particular combo, that would be considered a bullseye. Or if you got this combo, it is a bullseye. Sometimes this combo will be a bullseye. Sometimes you will have something like that, and then so that creates a circle, and then you will roll a third dot, so that creates a bullseye. So you're looking for certain dice combinations, and then what you're going to do is each test will tell you what you need to get, how many bullseyes you need. It will give you a super kind of a challenge where if you get this number here, then you get a bonus. And then each test will give you an accuracy value. That's how many dice you get to roll per shot. And then it tells you how many shots you get. They call sets. So you get to roll 4 sets of 3 dice in order to get 4 bullseyes with on this pot. Then down here, it tells you which symbols you can use to construct your bullseyes. So on this particular test, I can use the half black, I can use the white circle and the white dot. And so then you play a little game of Yahtzee. So I have 3 accuracy and I have 4 attempts. So you're going to roll your dice. You're going to look at what you rolled and then you can lock 1. So I did roll a circle. So I'm going to lock that circle and now I can continue to roll. In this first set, I can continue to roll these 2 dice. As long as you lock 1, you can continue to roll. Okay, so I didn't get anything on that one. So I do have to lock 1 and now I can roll. I'm looking for a dot. Okay, so I did not get a bullseye on that set. However, at the end of each set, you roll a, what do they call this? A wild die. And depending on the weapon that you are using, but depending on the slingshot or other things, you might get to roll a black die. This is kind of like the worst. This die gives you 2 chances to get a bullseye, but it might give you a chance to lose 1 die, or you might just get some blanks, which don't do anything. These other wild dice, they might add something like a reroll, or maybe you can change a facing to any other facing. And so these are used when you get other weapons. So at the end of each set, you roll your wild die and you see what you get. Okay, so nothing. So that set was a complete waste. So I didn't get anything. So then you would go on to your second set. And your second set here, let's roll that. Okay, so I can't use those. I can't use any of these, but I do have to lock one. And then you can keep rolling. Okay, I'm going to lock that dot. And now I need to get a circle. Nothing. Okay, so then you can roll your wild die. And you would have to lose one of those so you could choose one to take away from that set combination. As you can see, I'm having a very difficult time passing this test. Sometimes you roll well, sometimes you don't. Now, there is a thing called marksmanship, and that is a currency that you can spend to help mitigate some of the luck during your dice checks. And this is very handy, so always make sure to have this card out. We're going to talk a little bit about a frustration with this card towards the end of the video when we get to some of my frustrations with the game. So that is a representation of a simple combat test, a simple marksmanship test where you are trying to shoot things. There are also moments in the game where you will be fighting creatures, you will be fighting animals and fighting other people. And then it's kind of like a battle where you are trying to roll certain symbols to get bullseyes on the enemy. And the enemy will be rolling their dice and they will be trying to fill up this meter with their symbols. And you can spend certain symbols that you have rolled in order to add blocking cubes to where the enemy has to roll two of those symbols to get a single hit. And so there is some contested rolls, and I think that is done really well as well. So the combat, the dice mechanism, the pushing your luck, the Yahtzee style, the Elder Sign style game here, the dice game, is a lot of fun. I do really enjoy it, and I think it does a good job of simulating shooting a slingshot in a very weird way. There is also a fishing mini game, and I'll throw up a picture of the fishing setup on screen. And the fishing mini game is a lot of fun. I like the way that the cards get laid out. There are times in this game where you will have to lay cards out in a certain order. And so a lot of times with these kinds of game book / card games, people ask like, well, shouldn't this just be a game book? And I think this game does a good job of separating itself from a game book by asking you to do certain things with the cards. And you will lay out cards in a certain order and have to interact with them in a way that you just couldn't interact with them in a book form. So that is another good thing. The last really positive thing I do have to say is just the writing of the story, I think, is pretty good. It's fun. It's well written. They do a lot with a little bit of text, and I think that is another plus to the game. As far as learning the game, I have had some frustrations. There are some things that just could be a lot clearer in some of the decisions you make on the cards and in how the game teaches you to play. One of the first cards you draw in the game tells you to take 3 gold and 2 feats of marksmanship. But that's kind of before you even really know what those things are. And in reading the book, it doesn't have a detailed component list at the beginning of the rule book. It tells you what you get in the box, but it doesn't tell you what to use the various items for until all the way back here on page 9, I believe. It tells you what to use for to keep track of your gold and your marksmanship. It's a little frustrating in how the book is laid out. You might think that this is a learn to play as you play the game style card game, but it's really not. You really do need to read the entire rule book before you start, just because of the way things are ordered in the rule book. I don't think they're ordered in a very logical way. There are some inconsistencies, I think, in some of the language about how you are supposed to manipulate the cards in the deck. And I was a little confused. There were a handful of times while I played through chapter 1 that I started to second guess myself if I was playing the game correctly. And I think with just some tightening up of the rules of how they are written, how they are presented, I think that could be solved. One really good example is the game tells you to work with like one chapter at a time. So only have chapter 1 out when you're playing chapter 1. Okay, that's fine. However, the card that has what you can spend your marksmanship on and the status effects, this card is at the bottom of deck 4. I've actually seen some people who have taken pictures of their game while they are playing it, and they don't have this card out. If you don't have that card out, you're kind of having to constantly check in the book to see the status effects. And it's odd that they don't say, hey, also pull out this card when you start the game. And there are just enough things like that that just make the learning experience a little frustrating. I also want to mention something that this is probably the first game I've ever played where I have questioned the age recommendation, and this says 12 and up. The original Spire's End was pretty dark and it got pretty violent in some places, but the original Spire's End says 16 and up, and I think that is appropriate. I also think that this is a 16 and up game, and that's part of the reason why I mentioned how the art looks a little softer. It might portray or convey a softer tone to the story, but I don't think that's the case. For me, I think this game should be 16 and up. I just want to let people know, because this is a 2-player game, I could imagine some parents buying this to play with their sons or daughters. And it is pretty violent. There is some violent depictions. It's not the softer artwork does not mean that this is a softer story. So just know that going in. There is also one card that I was really taken aback by, and that is this card here. This is a test where you are shooting at a crow, a live crow that is strapped to a target. You do learn something about the crows later, but I'm not sure it's all crows in the game. That maybe softens this a little bit, but I felt like this was just a little bit too close to animal cruelty for something that I would like to see in my games. I'm not being overly sensitive. I'm not saying don't play this game. All I am saying is just know that there is some things like this in the game. Don't think that because it has a softer look to it that it has a softer edge. I would have liked to have known some more information before seeing this particular card. That's all I'm going to say. But yeah, overall, I think this is a pretty good adventure game. I'm having a lot of fun with it. I am really looking forward to going into chapter 2. There are some threads that I'm interested in seeing how they how they end up, and really enjoy this dice system. It is a lot of fun, very creative, and just a neat way to kind of simulate using a slingshot and looking for bullseyes. I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like this dice system in a game, and that is really cool. I'm excited because I've seen some things in chapter 1 that are making me really excited to see what the game is going to offer in chapters 2, 3, and 4. And in a narrative-driven game, that is a really good thing. So, all right, guys, well, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed taking a quick look at Spires and Hildegard. We will talk to you later. Bye-bye.